Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's newsletter. This week, we welcome back all students on campus, and there was a real buzz of excitement in classrooms and the yard as boys caught up with their friends for the first time in a long time for many. Watching groups hanging out in the yard made me reflect that our school is a really calm and peaceful place where, for the vast majority of the time anyway, there's mutual respect, appreciation, support, and tolerance. Historically, boys' schools were places where order was maintained through a regime of hard and fast rules and penalties. The latter were often quite arbitrary and sometimes quite brutal. At a 50-year reunion last year, an old boy of St Joseph's presented the school with the leather strap that some brave soul had stolen from a teacher half a century earlier. St Joseph's is a very different place today, and our response to wrongdoing is based on the principles of restorative practice. Of course, we still have clear rules and expectations and a series of penalties prescribed if boys don't meet expectations, but things are not as hard and fast, and we're much more aware of mitigating factors. I don't know whether this is cause and effect, but students are much more cooperative, and I think they generally meet expectations more readily than students of a generation prior. And of course, if we look to society in general, we see something similar with crime statistics. These are steadily reducing in almost all categories, despite what the tabloid press and some current affairs TV shows would have us believe. Calls for heavier penalties and longer periods of incarceration for all sorts of crime to send an example ignores clear evidence that the size of the penalty has little effect on the likelihood of someone committing a crime. Rather, of course, it's the likelihood of being caught and held accountable that influences their decision-making. The link between severity of penalty and deterrence used to be widely accepted, sometimes to a quite extraordinary extent. In the early 1800s in Britain, a child could be hanged for stealing. A female relative of mine was transported to Australia in 1791, aged 14. She allegedly stole a horse from a parson, but apparently always maintained that she had just taken it for a ride. In a school context, of course, it's important that we ensure that young men come to understand that there are consequences for breaking rules. If we don't ensure this takes place, then we're not really equipping them well for adult life. And there's a constant tension balancing this need for accountability with the fact that adolescent decision-making is often impulsive and the adolescent brain very much a work in progress. By and large, I think that today at St Joseph's we strike the right balance. Could I remind all members of the community that expressions of interest in the College Advisory Council, formerly known as the College Board, are being sought. We're hoping to have these by the end of this week. So if you're interested, there's some information on the website and there is a link attached to the hard copy of this newsletter. Our Year 12 VCE students this year have an additional process in place to ensure that no student is disadvantaged as a result of the impact of COVID-19 on him and his household. Called CED, or Consideration of Educational Disadvantage, this process is a really important one and it commenced this week. It's on a really tight time frame and the first part of the process requires input from each boy. This should be done in consultation with his family, and of course the next phase of the process is input from the college staff. I commenced this article writing about peace, and I'd like to finish with a prayer from Pope Francis. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Help us recognise the evil latent in communication that does not build communion. Help us remove the venom from our judgments. Help us to speak about others as our brothers and sisters. You are faithful and trustworthy. May our words be seeds of goodness for the world. Where there is shouting, let us practice listening. Where there is confusion, let us inspire harmony. Where there is ambiguity, let us bring clarity. Where there is exclusion, let us offer solidarity. Where there is sensationalism, let us use sobriety. Where there is superficiality, let us raise real questions. Where there is prejudice, let us awaken trust. Where there is hostility, let us bring respect. And where there is falsehood, let us bring truth. Amen. I hope this term is a wonderful and extremely successful one for you and your son. Stay well.